The League of Women Voters of the City of New York and Manhattan Neighborhood Network present the Democratic Debates for Manhattan.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Shula, a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm the moderator for the New York Senate Democratic debate for the 31st Senatorial District. The candidates are State Senator Adriano Espaillat, the incumbent, and Guillermo Linares. The 31st District is a long, thin district that begins at West 24th Street, hugs the Hudson River, and covers Marble Hill, Inwood, and Washington Heights. Let's get right to the questions. Mr. Espaillat, more jobs have been lost in the public sector than the private sector, yet governments are suffering from reduced tax revenue. What can the state legislature do to improve the job situation in the city, and particularly in the districts you represent?
Well, one of the main things that we should do, and thank you for the question, this is a critical question during this economic crisis that I'm sure the president will address in the next couple of days during the convention. But if we really want to make sure that we give small businesses a shot in the arm, and remember, small businesses continue to be the biggest employers across the state and across the nation. If we want to get them a shot in the arm, we should increase the minimum wage. We should put spending power in the pockets of regular New Yorkers. If we increase the minimum wage, and I have a bill that proposes to increase the minimum wage from the level that it is right now, $7.25, which is embarrassing. 20 states and the District of Columbia have higher minimum wage. Oregon has a minimum wage of $10.10, and yet all those states have a lower standard of living than New York City does. So, President Roosevelt, during the Great Depression, he put forward a great public works program, but he also implemented the minimum wage for the first time. He understood that this was an important way to put purchasing power in the pockets of working New Yorkers that then will go to these small businesses and spend their money and create jobs at the neighborhood level.
All right, Mr. Linares?
Assemblyman Guillermo Linares. I'm glad you asked the question. I, first of all, feel that this is a critical time to look for ways, creative ways, of looking to create jobs to address the economic crisis that communities like the one that I hope to represent with the support on this primary coming up are dying for. I believe that we need to look at small businesses and the fact that they've been on their own for so long, and we need to look for ways of incentivizing them to create even more jobs, expand, and keep their businesses on. They employ the majority of people that we have right now. And every time a small business closes, we lose jobs and revenue, and a community decays. But I believe that perhaps the greatest initiative should be addressing the need for affordable housing. I want to bring the private sector to invest massively the way they did it for private sector and high luxury apartment for affordable housing. There's a formula that can allow for that to take place, create jobs, and respond to a great need that we have.
I have a question on housing, I believe, later. So do you have any response? Or?
Well, I know that very often a government gives a tax credit or a tax cut to small businesses, and that's helpful. But if the consumers, if the customers are not coming in, that business will ultimately shut its doors down. So we have to, again, put purchasing power in the pockets of working New Yorkers. If we up the minimum wage to $8.50, people will still be will probably earn maybe a couple of $1,000s more a year. They're not going to rush and take a Caribbean vacation. They're going to go to those small businesses. They're going to spend their money there on items of priority and need, and that will create jobs for the neighborhood. I think that's critical, that we increase the purchasing power of every New Yorker.
Okay. You?
I'm the prime sponsor of the minimum wage bill that passed in the Assembly in this session that just is dead on arrival in the Senate side because it's desperately needed, particularly to infuse economic power and buying power with the working families. So I think that we need to pass that, but it's not enough. I think we need to look for a way of incentivizing private sector, public initiative to create jobs.
All right. Assemblyman Linares, mayoral control of the city's public schools was reauthorized for 7 more years in 2009. Do you support the current system? What are your recommendations for the running of schools in your district?
I support mayoral control with my vast experience as an advocate for public education. However, I believe that the one weakness that is had is that it has failed to really involve parents and involve communities where the schools are. And I think that any effort moving forward that will continue to involve mayoral control needs to address this. And this is something that I'm prepared to be aggressive with at the state level.
Okay.
Well, mayoral control, I voted for mayoral control, but I think now is the time when it comes up again to really take a good hard look at it and see whether or not it has resulted in a total reform or revamp of the educational system. I think it's critical to understand whether this model has really helped kids at the classroom. And we know that for many, many years, what mayoral control resulted was in restructuring of the school system back and forth, and parents and teachers and principals were in disarray. So I think we ought to take a good hard look at it. I've already began to work with parents. We sponsor an institute in the local school district, a leadership institute that equips them with the tools to be able to navigate the system, because I agree that the mayoral control model does not grant parents the ability to be an advocate as effective as they should be for the education of their children.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Mr.
I believe that we really need to take a hard look at not just some of the initiatives that have been undertaken on the mayoral control to build upon the good things, particularly the focus on budgeting at the school level, the role of the principal and the teachers, the professional. There's been growth that we've observed there, but in the triangle that needs to bring the community and the parents and the home, I think that that's where we need to really strengthen and focus.
Okay. And Senator, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I think very much that parents need to be continued to support them. Today, we'll have, parents preparing to bring their kids into school. Something goes wrong. Very often, parents have 2 children that perhaps go to 2 different schools, and they have to be at 2 places at the same time. That's the kind of issue that regularly parents will go to the local district office and resolve. Now they don't know where to go. And so, we must provide parents with a mechanism to ensure that they are assisted with the education of the children. With regards to budgeting at the school levels, I get lots of requests from parents and parent associations, whereas in the past I would get them for the yearbook or a trip to Washington. Now I'm getting requests for supplies because there's poor budgeting occurring at the school level.
Okay.
And so we need to reform that as well.
Okay. Senator Espaillat, do you favor introducing high-volume horizontal hydraulic fracking in New York? What legislature is needed to ensure safety, manage costs, and protect New Yorkers? Should there be federal legislation introduced as natural gas supplies cross state lines?
2 Sundays ago, I led a bus of over 40 residents of the 31st Senatorial District to visit the Marcellus Shale to see firsthand what is occurring there with hydrofracking. And I'm very much against it. It's happening everywhere there. It's happening next to schools. It's happening next to homes, next to playgrounds, and it's just all over the place. And these companies that do hydrofracking that come from other states, they come from a culture where they feel they can do just about anything that they can get away with. So I think that it's a very, very dangerous model. We visited the homes of certain residents where their water supply was contaminated. They have these water buffaloes, these big water tanks, and now that the companies have to supply these homes with water because their water system has been contaminated. We visited ponds and creeks that have been contaminated by hydrofracking. And that trip was an eye-opening trip where I feel that many of us felt that went there that we should oppose hydrofracking at any cost, and we should support a system of renewable energy for the state of New York that should be the model and the leader for the rest of the states across the country.
Assemblyman?
Yes, in this session that just passed, I was one of the prime sponsors on the moratorium on hydrofracking. I believe that this is the greatest threat that we environmentally have in the state of New York, and particularly the city of New York, where we rely, the most precious commodity that we have is our water. The pride of New York is having the best water. And this is put in jeopardy, and it puts our lives and our health in jeopardy, all driven by expediency on economic interests looking to make money and make profit. And I think we should have a moratorium extended. There should be no drilling whatsoever. And I believe that we need to look at this issue nationally to make sure that we send a clear message that whenever we're looking to create jobs or to make profits, it should never be putting the lives and the health of our citizens at risk, and this is precisely what this is. I will stand against hydrofracking every step of the way.
Well, one of the things that we saw when we visited Marcellus Shale was that, in fact, it wasn't an economic stimulus for the area. That what it was a bunch of outsiders making money on their own, that, in fact, it placed a great stress on the infrastructure of the county. The roads and the bridges now have to deal with very heavy equipment that come in and out of the region on a daily basis. So, and worst of all, it splits the community apart. It rips them apart. And that was horrendous to see how neighbors were against each other, one for drilling and the other one against hydrofracking.
Okay, thank you. Congressman.
I would say that we really, really need to look at this not just as downstate, upstate, but we need to look at this issue as an environmental disaster about to occur if we allow any type of drilling. And I think we need to rally aggressively because this is about the future. It's not even about how many jobs you're going to bring into the economy. So I think we need to rally our forces and send the governor and the legislature, especially the Senate, a clear message that we're not going to tolerate this type of initiative undermining our environment.
Okay, Assemblyman, do you favor reforming campaign finance rules at the state level by significantly lowering limits on contributions to candidates and to housekeeping accounts of political parties? And would you support a system similar to the one established by the Campaign Finance Board of New York City?
I'm one of the prime sponsors on the legislations that seeks to reform the entire campaign finance at the state level. I champion the initiative. I was one of the sponsors. I supported when I landed strengthening the campaign finance reform. I was, in fact, elected under this program as in '91 as a member of the New York City Council. And so I believe that the benefits when it comes to transparency and to playing by the rule and taking away the big interest that usually dominates over the interest of people who elect the representative gets addressed when you bring this type of program, this initiative, and I am fully supportive of this in the state level.
I believe that there should be a major reform on elections altogether, including campaign finance reform. We need to take money out of politics. The city system is a good model to follow. I would be strongly, and I'm a sponsor of that legislation. We need to also, I was very strong in support of an independent redistricting commission, unlike my opponent who took the pledge and then voted for it. These lines were drawn, including the current lines, to basically guarantee the Republicans majority in the Senate, including a new senatorial district. The 63rd district in part of Brooklyn and Queens was created around neighborhoods with large numbers of Republican enclaves. And this was done to undermine the residents' ability to be able to select their representatives, and not the other way around, what representatives select their voters. So I took the pledge that Mayor Koch put out there, Uprising New York, that I would not support a gerrymander redistricting process. I voted against it. You know, as a result, the Senate and my opponent voted for it, and now we have a district, the 31st Senatorial District, which goes all the way down to 24th Street. It's called the Spaghetti District, right, because the end of the district has got a little tweet there that's like a spaghetti. But this is not new. It happened 10 years ago when they tried to punish Eric Schneiderman, the current Attorney General. When Joe Bruno got together with some other folks and tried to punish Eric Schneiderman and created a district that went all the way up to Washington Heights Inwood, and many felt he would lose that district, and it turned out to be a blessing for him. Okay, it catapulted him to become Attorney General. So I believe in election reform, reforming the Board of Elections, which is a nightmare, independent redistricting commission, and obviously campaign finance reform.
I'm fully supportive of an independent redistricting commission. I believe that the governor and the leadership of both houses fail to really act and create this independent commission, which would have brought sanity to a chaotic process that we've had. They failed to act, and they left the system as it has been. I'm surprised that my opponent is raising the issue that now we were left with the same system we've had this time around, and 10 years ago, he voted for the same process which was before him when he was in the assembly. I believe...
Go ahead.
Thanks.
You know, we both signed a pledge, and we said that we would oppose a gerrymander system that guarantees voters will not be able to choose their representatives, but the other way around, representatives will choose their voters. I voted against it. In fact, we walked out of the chambers. All we have when we get elected is our vote. And if we disagree with the governor and the speaker and the head of the Senate, then we should vote against it. We should not sort of like be succumbed by the three men in the room model that they dictate down to us and by extension to our constituents what they want. He had the opportunity to vote against it, and he didn't. I had the opportunity to vote against it after both having signed the pledge, and I walked out of the Senate chambers in protest of gerrymandering the state of New York to not have a system of lines that will almost guarantee that Republicans will continue in the majority in the state Senate. So you cannot be a catalyst of change and say that you're going to change the Senate when in fact you have contributed to keep the Republicans in power.
You cannot act on a process which can only be changed if you establish an independent commission to really change the messed up process that we had. And so we were left with the same system that we've had, and part of what we needed to do was to work within what was left for us. However, I'm a strong supporter of independent commission. I think it needs to be taken away from the legislators. But it was my opponent that was running all over the place, delineating lines for the congressional seat that he was interested on, participating in the very process that he's now claiming that I was part of. Everybody had to participate in what was left when the leadership in the state failed to have an independent commission.
Okay. Senator, there's a shortage of affordable housing in the city and in the districts you want to represent. Given the lack of federal and state funding, what can the state legislature do to stabilize the housing market?
Well, I'm glad you bring up that question because housing continues to be, affordable housing continues to be the major issue affecting all of the residents in the 31st Senatorial District. And as a ranker member of the Housing Committee, I led the fight in the Senate with the governor to ensure that we extended rent regulations for over 1.2 million units of housing across the city of New York. Many of them were in the 31st Senatorial District. As a result of that fight, for the first time in the history of the legislature, we were able to slightly improve tenant protections. And the governor committed to creating a tenant protection unit. I'm working very hard with the governor's office to accomplish that, where you will now be able to go to that unit as a tenant, and you'll be able to go to their website and see the full rent history of the lease for that apartment that you're going to sign. You're going to be able to see how many violations are there, how many violations there are in the building, if the landlord has financial problems with the bank, if the landlord has other problems with other buildings that he owns or he or she owns. So this is a major tool, and I'm happy to have been a champion in it. I believe very strongly that this primary is being launched by the landlord interest, and that my opponent has received over $40,000 from the landlord lobby to try to push me out because I've been a standard, forward supporter and maverick for tenants' right. And he has received money from RSA and from some of the other landlord groups, and they're trying to push the tenant movement in northern Manhattan under the rug. That will not happen. I will win this race. We will continue to organize tenant. You will be able to see the funding that he's gotten from the landlord interest, and we will push forward.
I have to cut you off. Go ahead.
I've had support from across the board in terms of my constituency, and if you want to look at where my position has been when it comes to housing or any other issue, just go to the record and you will find where I've stood every step of the way. In fact, when I was in the city council in '97, I was the one of a few who stood up to the speaker of the city council to help prevent vacancy decontrol. And going ask what the position was in the assembly for my opponent when that vote came before him. But I took a stand, and you know how many apartments we lose every year? 10,000 because of that. The legislation that just passed in this legislature session was one that tried not only to strengthen rent laws, which I was a sponsor of, but also repeal vacancy decontrol. And so that's where I stand. I firmly support tenants and affordable housing. I've been a champion of it all throughout, and I will continue to be.
Okay. Assemblyman, I have the next question. The New York State Public Ethics Commission has been working overtime these past few years. 2 more legislatures have been in the news last week, accused of abusing public trust and the taxpayers' money. What needs to be done to ensure the voters that their representatives will serve them honestly and responsibly?
I believe that this is an area where we have to have an independent oversight watchdog to observe the conduct of every single elected official to make sure that they live up to the mandate that they have representing their constituents and doing the correct thing. I also believe that transparency is critical and important. That's why I fully support campaign finance. But also I believe that integrity in terms of the office that you hold needs to be of utmost standard. And I think you need to also show and give a signal that when you violate the trust that is given to you, you will pay dearly.
Okay.
Well, clearly you have to, again, take the money out of politics, and the best way to accomplish that is to support a full-blown campaign finance reform for the state legislature. But in these particular cases, I think it's critical to note that these kinds of violations or criminal action should not be policed by legislators themselves. That's why an ethics commission, an ethics panel was created. One of the cases should have never been dealt with as an inside negotiations or an inside settlement. It should have been immediately referred to the panel that oversees ethics of all of us as legislators. And I think that if anything we can learn from this past experience in the last couple of weeks is that anything that occurs within the legislature should not be policed by legislators themselves. It should be policed by an outside body that's independent, that has the ability to subpoena, that has the ability to accuse, indict, and prosecute anybody that has been involved in any wrongdoing or any illegal actions.
Okay. At this time, gentlemen, I'm going to give you a minute and a half each to wrap up. Assemblyman?
Well, I'm running for state senate because I've worked for a year and a half, going on 2 years in the assembly. I'm the promoter of, prime sponsor of the New York DREAM Act. Is dead on arrival in the Senate. I want to go and work and bring a progressive agenda in the Senate. I bring the experience that I think will make our constituents know that I will be a full-time senator working for them in the 31st. I have the support in the north of Robert Jackson, in the south of the district, Tom Duane. I have the support of Ruth Messenger and Betsy Gutbound, Ronnie Eldridge. But the support that is most critical are of those who know of my trajectory of bringing results to communities, and this is the experience that I think right now the Senate desperately needs. And I intend to work hard to help bring a majority of Democrats to really inject the Senate with a progressive agenda that will help our neighborhoods and our communities and bring people together to address the critical needs that they have right now: housing, education, job creation, and also helping the small business community.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a proven record for 16 years in the legislature. That's why I got the endorsement of Congressman Jerry Nadler, Assemblymember Dick Goffrey, Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal, most major unions, Councilmember Idanis Rodriguez, and a host of elected officials, unions, good government groups, Citizens Union, have endorsed my candidacy. The Tenants PAC, which represents the best interests of tenants, which continues to be the primary issue affecting the 31st Senatorial District, is fully behind this candidacy. So I'm very proud of the work that I've done. I'm a fighter. I'm a progressive fighter for the 31st Senatorial District. I don't think that you can change the Senate around and make it Democrats, number one, by colluding with Joe Bruno 10 years ago to gerrymander, our current state attorney general, out of office, or to vote against independent redistricting 10 years later. I don't think that's the way you get the Republicans out of power.
All right. Thank you for this evening's debate. I'd like to thank you both, Senator and Assemblyman, for your participation. As a nonpartisan organization, the League of Women Voters seeks to serve the public by providing researched and informed programs which give as much possible information in order to ensure a knowledgeable voter. The Democratic primary election is Thursday, September 13th. Only registered voters who are current members of the Democratic Party can vote. Please study the issues and, most importantly, vote. Voting is not a right everywhere, but it is our duty as New Yorkers and Americans. To ignore such a duty and privilege takes away your voice in government. Every vote is essential, for how else can political leaders know what the people want if we don't tell them? Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Good luck to both of you.